Well, New South Wales Liberal leader Mark Speman decided to enter the immigration debate this week with a novel twist on why we need high numbers of people coming into the country. Speakman told the Daily Telegraph that Australia needs to import more migrants to secure the continent. So he's proposing an invasion of migrants to avoid an invasion of foreigners. Right. Or, to put it another way, in order to stop people forcing their way into our country, Speakman reckons we should relax our borders so people can freely enter our country. In order to secure the borders, we need to eliminate the borders, because only when the borders are gone will the borders be strong. I predict Labor Premier Chris Minns will lead New South Wales for the next 100 years. But I digress. Speakman, who after this fiasco would be well advised to speak less, told the Daily Telegraph, "I don't think Australia has any strategic choice but to maintain significant population growth. We are a lightly populated continent at the bottom of Asia. When you've got maybe half the world's population in the continent next to us, and when there are incredible strains on the resources in those countries, when you could have climate change potentially displacing hundreds of millions of people in the next decades, I don't think Australia credibly can maintain its occupation of the continent without some population growth." Now, Speakman didn't say how importing millions of people for whom we don't have housing would help to ward off an attack from Xi Jinping. Presumably, the Chinese dictator believes his 1.4 billion people are enough to overrun an Australian population of 25 million, but he'd lose all confidence if we were, say, 30 million, and he'd completely give up pretensions of expansion if our population topped 32 million. We don't need nuclear subs or missiles or armed drones. No, we just need a stack more people running from climate change to be granted asylum, and we could plonk them along the beaches with pitchforks. Sounds like a plan. I can see it now. Xi Jinping is about to launch an attack, but at the last minute, upon learning that thousands of Australians are sleeping in their cars and can't afford groceries, he orders his armada of warships back to port. The very notion that a larger population made up of migrants would protect Australia from invasion is nonsense. In fact, it might do the exact opposite. Ever-expanding migration heaped upon insufficient infrastructure, topped with a lethal dose of muddle-headed multiculturalism, might only serve to fracture social cohesion and make us less secure. As macro business chief economist Leith Van Onselen pointed out, our major cities are already becoming unlivable, and degraded infrastructure and housing is not helping. The invasion we ought to be worried about is the invasion of LNP ranks by leftist lightweights speaking nonsense like Speakman. Mark Speakman hadn't spoken much since becoming New South Wales Opposition leader, and now we know why. He's an opposition leader nobody knows, pushing a policy nobody supports. How on earth can the New South Wales Conservatives hope to win government while being led by a guy who calls for higher immigration in the middle of a housing and infrastructure crisis? Speakman later tried to walk back his comments, talking to Ben Fordham on 2GB.
Have you had a shocker or what?
No, look, I had a free-flowing conversation with James O'Doherty, and probably in hindsight, some of my comments were a bit too colourful.
Indeed, the colourful Mr. Speakman might want to, dull it down a bit. A Liberal leader arguing for a bigger Australia in the middle of a housing and infrastructure crisis to avoid a foreign invasion might as well just go ahead and start speaking a foreign language now, because it makes absolutely no sense to anyone, least of all to his Conservative base.